Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are going to be talking about something pretty cool.
Yeah,
How our brains actually learn.
that's right.
So we're going to explore,
Yeah,
some of the reasons why learning sometimes feels hard, and then also some amazing things about how our brains work.
exactly. And, learning isn't just about like reading a textbook or sitting in a classroom.
Right.
It's about really understanding how our brains make those connections.
Yeah.
And how we can actually make learning easier and more fun.
Okay, I'm ready.
But
Let's unlock those learning secrets.
let's dive in.
But one thing I've always wondered is,
Yeah.
why is it that starting something new
Huh?
can feel so tough?
Well, you know how sometimes we feel pain in our bodies?
Yeah.
It turns out that our brains actually use some of the same signals for learning as they do for pain.
Wait, really?
Yeah,
So learning can actually feel like pain?
it can.
That explains a lot.
Yeah,
No wonder we put off, studying or practicing.
exactly. But the good news is,
Okay.
just like physical pain, usually that feeling of discomfort fades away once we actually get started.
Oh,
It's almost like our brains are trying to protect us from something new.
Interesting.
But once we take that first step, they're like, oh, okay, this is fine.
So it's just about taking that first step, even if it feels a little uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Right now.
Taking that first step is the most important part.
Okay.
What we call taking initiative.
Okay.
Think about it. Have you ever noticed how good it feels to finally start a project
Oh, absolutely.
that you've been putting off?
Huge weight lifted off your shoulders.
Yes, because our brains love progress.
Interesting.
So every time we take action, our brains are actually rewarding us with that feeling of satisfaction.
So we're kind of training our brains to enjoy
Yeah,
the process of learning.
you got it.
Okay.
Now, you know how we love instant gratification?
Oh, yeah.
Like checking social media or watching funny videos?
Totally guilty of that.
Yeah, those things give us that quick burst of pleasure.
Right.
But the feeling doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
Learning, on the other hand, is more like a long-term investment.
Okay.
It might take more effort up front,
Yeah.
but the rewards are much bigger and they last much longer.
It's like choosing between a sugary snack
Yeah.
that gives us that quick energy boost
Mm-hmm.
or a healthy meal that nourishes us for hours.
Exactly. Learning helps us grow and develop as people,
Right.
and that sense of accomplishment is so satisfying.
I'm starting to see how this is all connected.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a confession.
Okay.
I used to think that my brain could get full like a computer hard drive.
Uh-huh.
There's only so much I can learn
Yeah.
before I run out of space.
Right.
Is that true?
I hear that a lot, but luckily that is not how our brains work.
Okay, good.
Our brains are amazing. They actually grow and change every time we learn something new.
Wait, so there's no limit
There's no limit.
to how much we can learn.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Every time we learn, our brains create these new connections.
Okay.
Kind of like building new roads in a city.
Wow.
So the more we learn, the more connected our brains become.
Yeah.
And the easier it becomes to learn even more.
Our brains are like these ever-expanding cities of knowledge. But
Yeah.
even though our brains don't get full,
Uh-huh.
I still sometimes feel overwhelmed with information.
Yeah.
How do we process all of this new stuff without getting overloaded?
That's where rest comes in.
Okay.
Our brains need time to process everything we've learned
Yeah.
and make those new connections strong.
Okay.
You can think of it kind of like organizing a messy room.
Right.
You need to take some time to sort things out and put everything in its place.
So giving our brains a break helps them to organize
Yes,
all the new information.
exactly. And one of the best ways to give our brains a rest is through sleep.
I knew you were going to say that.
Of course.
I've definitely noticed that I remember things better after a good night's sleep.
Absolutely, because sleep is like a superpower for learning.
Okay.
When we sleep, our brains actually replay what we've learned,
Oh.
strengthening those memories and making them stick.
So sleep is crucial.
It is.
But are there other things that we can do
Yeah,
to help our brains recharge?
absolutely. Believe it or not.
Okay.
Things like physical exercise and spending time with friends
Really?
can actually help our brains grow.
So going for a walk or chatting with a friend can make us smarter.
In a way, yes.
I love that.
Exercise helps our brains create new brain cells,
Wow.
and socializing actually strengthens the connections between those cells.
So it's like we're taking care of our brains
Yeah,
by taking care of our bodies and our social lives.
you got it.
This is blowing my mind.
I know, it's fascinating.
It's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've heard people talk about
Yeah.
focused mode and diffused mode when it comes to learning.
Yes.
What exactly are those?
So imagine you're shining a spotlight on something that's focus mode. It's when we're concentrating deeply on one specific task.
Got it.
Like reading a book or solving a math problem.
Okay, I can picture that.
Yeah, and then diffused mode is more like a dimmer switch.
Okay.
It's when our brains are relaxed and our thoughts are kind of wandering freely.
Okay.
This is often when we have those aha moments.
Right.
Where like a solution to a problem will suddenly pop into our heads.
So we need both focused concentration.
We do.
And periods of letting our minds relax.
Yes.
To really learn something well.
Exactly. It's like alternating between working really hard on a puzzle and then stepping back to see the bigger picture.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, one thing that's always resonated with me is this idea that you can't really learn by watching someone else do something.
Right.
It's like trying to learn to ride a bike by watching videos.
Exactly. You got to get on the bike yourself.
You have to do it.
Experience those wobbly moments and figure out how to balance.
Yeah.
So learning is active. You have to get your hands dirty and actually do the thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about when new concepts feel so abstract? Like, how do we actually make them feel real?
Well, our brains love stories and they love connections. So one way to make abstract ideas more concrete is to use analogies, metaphors, or connect them to something we already understand.
So it's like building a bridge
Yes.
between the unfamiliar and the familiar,
Exactly.
making those new concepts click into place.
You got it.
Now, I know a lot of people, including myself, get really nervous about tests, but I've heard that testing yourself is actually really important for learning.
It is. Why is that? It might sound counterintuitive, but when we test ourselves, it actually helps us learn better.
Okay.
Because when we're trying to recall information, our brains have to work harder to retrieve it. And that actually strengthens those connections in our brains.
So it's like giving our brains a workout.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes.
Oh, good.
Mistakes are actually valuable feedback.
They show us where we need to focus our attention and study more.
Some mistakes are like signposts.
Yes.
Pointing us in the right direction.
I like that.
I like that too.
And remember, even the smallest actions can lead to big changes over time.
This is so inspiring.
It is.
It's like the power to learn anything is within all of us.
You got it.
We just have to take that first step and keep going.
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive on learning.
It's amazing to think about how much we can learn if we just put our minds to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I think often holds people back is that fear of not being naturally talented.
Oh, yeah. I've totally felt that before. Like I see someone who's like amazing at drawing or playing music, and I think, oh, I could never do that. Yeah, but what if we shifted our thinking a little bit?
Okay.
Instead of focusing on what we think we lack, what if we focused on what we can control?
Okay, so like how much effort we put in and how dedicated we are to learning.
Exactly. Anyone can develop the talent of hard work and perseverance.
So instead of comparing ourselves to others, we should really focus on our own progress and celebrate those small wins.
Absolutely. Each step forward, no matter how small, shows that we're committed to learning and growing.
That's a great reminder. Now, let's say we want to learn something complex, like drawing. Where do we even begin?
Well, instead of trying to learn everything at once, it can be helpful to focus on our biggest weaknesses first.
So, like if I'm learning to draw and hands are my biggest struggle, I should really focus on understanding the anatomy of hands.
Exactly. By focusing on your weaknesses, you're not only improving your skills, but you're also making the learning process more meaningful.
Because you're applying the information you're learning to a real challenge you're facing.
Precisely. Now, remember how we talked about testing ourselves?
Yeah.
It might sound scary, but it's a really powerful way to learn.
I'm starting to understand that testing isn't about proving how smart we are. It's really about helping us learn.
Exactly. When we test ourselves, we're basically giving our brains a workout, making those connections stronger.
And we learn from our mistakes too, right?
Absolutely. Mistakes are like these little guides that show us where we need to focus our attention.
So testing helps us see how far we've come and where we need to go next. Now let's talk about something that I think we all struggle with from time to time: procrastination.
Procrastination. That voice in our heads that says, I'll do it later.
I know that voice all too well.
Well, one reason we procrastinate is because we often anticipate that initial discomfort of learning.
We dread that feeling of being a beginner, of struggling with something new.
Exactly. But what if we changed how we think about that discomfort? What if we saw those wobbly moments as a sign that we're actually growing?
It's like reminding ourselves that discomfort is a necessary step toward mastery.
Precisely. And once we get over that initial resistance, we often find that learning becomes more enjoyable and rewarding.
So the key is to focus on taking that first step, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
Exactly. We don't have to do everything perfectly right away. Small, consistent efforts can lead to big progress over time.
It's like climbing a mountain. We don't need to worry about reaching the summit right away. We just need to focus on taking one step at a time.
Beautifully put. Now, remember how we talked about focused and diffused thinking?
Yes, focus mode is like shining a spotlight on a specific task, and diffuse mode is like letting our minds wander.
And both are super important for learning.
So we need both focused concentration and periods of relaxation to really understand new information.
Exactly. It's like alternating between working really hard on a puzzle and then stepping away to let the solution kind of come to you.
I like that analogy. So when we're learning something new, we need to dedicate time to focus concentration, but we also need to give our brains a break to let things sink in.
Precisely. And sometimes those aha moments, those sudden bursts of understanding happen when we're in diffused mode, when our minds are relaxed and wandering.
It's like the pieces of the puzzle suddenly fall into place.
Exactly. Now, another important aspect of learning is making those abstract concepts feel real.
We talked about that a little bit earlier. It's about connecting new information to things we already understand, right?
We can use analogies, metaphors, and real-world examples to make those abstract ideas more tangible.
So like if we're learning about electricity, we can think about it like water flowing through pipes.
Exactly. Or if we're learning about coding, we can imagine algorithms as recipes for computers to follow.
By making those connections, we make the information more meaningful and easier to remember.
Precisely. Now, one final challenge that many learners face is the fear of making mistakes.
Oh, that's a big one. We all want to get things right, and it can be so scary to make mistakes.
But here's the thing. Mistakes are actually a crucial part of learning. They provide valuable feedback and show us where we need to improve.
So instead of being afraid of making mistakes, we should see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. Every time we make a mistake, our brains create a new connection, a new pathway.
So in a way, making mistakes is actually helping our brains learn.
Precisely. And over time, as we make more mistakes and learn from them, we become more skilled and knowledgeable.
That's encouraging. It's like that saying, we learn more from our failures than our successes.
Absolutely. So next time you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up about it. See it as a positive step in your learning journey.
A chance to learn, adapt, and grow. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to go back to the idea of taking initiative.
It's so easy to get overwhelmed by all the things we want to learn, to feel like we don't even know where to begin.
And that can lead to procrastination, to that feeling of, I'll start tomorrow.
But even the smallest action taken today can make a world of difference.
It's about focusing on what we can do right now, instead of getting stuck in the what ifs.
Exactly. And remember, learning is a journey, not a destination. It's about embracing the process, the ups and downs, and the triumphs along the way.
And with each step we take, we're not only expanding our knowledge, but also becoming more confident and resilient learners.
Absolutely. So, as we move into the final part of our deep dive, let's hold on to this feeling of empowerment, knowing that we truly can learn anything we set our minds to.
I love that. The power to learn is within each of us.
Yeah.
We just have to tap into it.
And we'll be back soon with even more strategies and insights to help you unlock your full learning potential.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive on learning.
Yeah, I'm excited to wrap up with some really practical tips
Okay.
that you can use right away.
Me too. So let's start with something we talked about earlier, the importance of rest and sleep.
Yes, it might seem counterintuitive, but getting enough sleep is actually one of the best things you can do for your learning.
Yeah, I know we talked about how sleep helps our brains organize information. But can you remind us why that's so important?
Sure. So when we learn something new, our brains create these new connections.
Right.
But those connections are still fragile.
Okay.
Sleep helps to strengthen those connections and make the memories more permanent.
So sleep is like the glue that holds our learning together.
I love that analogy.
Okay, good.
Yeah, when we don't get enough sleep, those connections can weaken.
Right.
And it becomes harder to remember what we've learned.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I've definitely noticed that I'm way more forgetful when I'm tired.
Exactly. So if you want to learn effectively, make sure you're getting enough rest.
Your brain will thank you.
Yes.
Now, what about physical exercise and social interaction?
Yeah.
We talked about how those can actually help our brains grow.
I know it might sound surprising,
It does.
but it's true.
Yeah.
When we exercise, our brains release these chemicals that help to create new brain cells.
So going for a run or hitting the gym is actually workout for our brains too.
Exactly. And then social interaction is important because it helps to strengthen the connections between those brain cells.
So spending time with friends and family can actually make us smarter.
It's amazing, right?
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, learning isn't just about sitting at a desk and studying.
Right.
It's about taking care of our whole selves, our bodies, our minds, and our social connections.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on learning.
Good, I'm glad.
Okay, let's talk about something a bit more mysterious.
Okay.
Intuition.
Yes, intuition is that gut feeling we sometimes have, that sense of knowing something without being able to explain why.
But how does intuition play a role in learning?
Intuition can be a really powerful tool, especially as we become more experienced in a certain area.
Okay.
It can help us make quick decisions and solve problems more efficiently.
So it's like our brains are recognizing patterns and making connections
Yeah,
based on our past experiences.
exactly. But it's important to remember that intuition isn't always right.
Okay.
Sometimes our gut feelings can lead us astray,
Right.
especially when we're learning something new.
So we shouldn't always trust our first instincts.
It's good to listen to your intuition, but it's also important to be open to new information and to be willing to change your mind when you're presented with new evidence.
So it's about finding a balance between trusting our gut and being open to learning new things. Now, before we wrap up, I want to address one final challenge that I think a lot of learners face, that fear of not being good enough.
Yes. It's so easy to compare ourselves to others and feel like we're falling short.
It is.
But it's important to remember that everyone starts somewhere. Every expert was once a beginner.
That's true.
Yeah. And it's through consistent effort, perseverance, and a willingness to embrace those mistakes that we develop mastery.
Focus on your own progress. Celebrate those small wins. And don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Yes, learning is a journey. We don't have to go it alone.
We don't.
Surround yourself with supportive people. Find mentors who can guide you, and remember that it's okay to ask questions.
That's such a great reminder. Now, as we come to the end of our deep dive, I'm feeling so inspired and excited to continue my own learning journey.
Awesome. I love to hear that. And remember, you have the power to learn anything you set your mind to. It's all about taking that first step, believing in yourself, and enjoying the process.
I love that. Well, that's all for today's deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those brains buzzing and never stop learning.